Okay, so we all knew it would be bad just looking at the title. You know, the film is called The Last Airbender. But I don't think anyone really knew how bad it would be. And I saw it yesterday, and I don't think it's awful. To me, an awful film is one that you just can't watch at all because it's so poorly made. But it is bad. It is very, very bad. And it's bad in the sense of editing. You know, The Last Airbender has a terrible edit of its narrative and character development. So it's not structured like a three-act film. You don't have Act 1, Act 2, Act 3. We've got Act 1, or as it's called, Book 1, and it's got Acts 3 in a bit of it. It's got a bit of Act 2. Act 2 has a bit of 3, and hell, even 4. And Act 3 has a bit of 1 until the full circle is complete. So basically, the characters don't develop at all. They can't develop in this narrative. So you think our main characters are developing, and then by the end of the film, they're back to square one. So they haven't really. So they've wasted 2 hours of us watching this film, and nothing has happened to the characters. As acting goes, I don't know the name of the kid they got to play the Avatar, but he was good. I think he tried his best, but M. Night Shyamalan blah 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 is not a good action or fantasy director. He's good at thriller, he's good at psychological horror, but he is not good at kids' fantasy. So his direction of this kid, if there was any, was terrible. And this kid tried his best, but it could have been a lot better. And the same goes for the rest of the cast. As the casting itself in this film, I think is pretty good. I really, really, really liked Dev Patel from Slumdog Millionaire as this prince who's kind of a villain, but then he becomes a good guy at the end, but he isn't. He was probably the best thing in it. And it's awkward. The writing for him was a lot better than the main character. So really, he overshadows the main character, and I would almost care more about him than I do this bald kid. I know it's based on a very successful cartoon, not an anime, a cartoon. I've never watched it, so I don't know how faithful this film is to the show. But this movie, and the way it's edited, feels like they've taken 3 seasons of a live-action show, then they get M. Night, whatever his name is, to make a 2-hour movie from clips of all these 3 seasons. And that's why it feels so haphazard and sloppy when you watch it. I mean, as CGI goes, it's pretty poor. But the one CGI element that really pissed me off in the cinema was this bald kid, the Avatar. He has like a pet dragon, like a furry white dragon. But it looks exactly the same as the dragon in that film, The Never-Ending Story. They look identical. And that is really, really sloppy and shoddy and poor design. And I think shoddy is probably the best word to describe this film, because none of the characters develop, the dialogue is god-awful, the special effects suck, the camera work is appalling. The camera work for many of the fight scenes is in one take, which is fine, you know, that's how I would do it, but nothing happens in that take. There's a good 90-second take where there's barely any action, and what there is, you can't see it very well because the camera's panned over to the next bit in the scene. I mean, Shyamalan, he's written this out as a trilogy. He's got plans to do this epic 3-part adventure, and it opens up really pretentiously, I think, with the graphics of Book 1, Water. So I thought, like, in half an hour it would say Book 2, Earth, and then Book 3, Air, Fire, whatever. But it doesn't. It opens up with Book 1 as if the first film is Book 1, which is pretty pretentious, and it also ends on a cliffhanger. So it's immediately sequel-baiting us. And this film is making money, but I don't know if it's going to make enough for Disney to let them do another one, because no one likes this film. No one knew it would be good just from the trailer or the poster or whatever you saw it from. And Shyamalan, it's really depressing to actually see a director who had a great... You know, he did The Sixth Sense and then Unbreakable. And Unbreakable, I think, is his best work yet. And then he does Signs, which is okay, and then he does The Village, which I think is pretty dull, but it's worth the twist. I think it's worth the twist at the end. The twist is brilliant, and so is the soundtrack, actually, to that film. Then he does Lady in the Water. I haven't seen Lady in the Water, though I've heard that's awful. And then he does The Happening. And my God, The Happening was one of the funniest things I've ever seen. I mean, Mark Wahlberg is a good actor, but at the same time, he really, really, really needs a better agent, because he is just doing shit after shit after shit. And, I mean, he did Max Payne and then The Happening in the same year. You know, that's got to hurt. And The Happening itself, at least, it was bad, but at least it was filmed like a proper film. This Airbender movie, it's not like a normal film. It hasn't got three structures. It hasn't got characters. The acting could have been a lot better. It's a wasted opportunity there. The pacing is all over the place. There's so many flashbacks, which I'm not against flashbacks, but... Oh, right, there's a scene where the evil people in this film, who are the Fire Nations, you know, because fire is bad, they're about to attack the Water Kingdom. And the Avatar kid is staying in the Water Kingdom with his two pals who go off on adventures. And they've been there for about 3 weeks, waiting for the Fire Nations to arrive. And on the one night when the Fire Nations have arrived and are about to attack, the Avatar says, "I must meditate for 4 days." Why couldn't he do that earlier? Why now? It's not building up any tension. It's terrible. The writing is awful, and the dialogue is nothing but exposition. The Fire Nations just go on about exposition, 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 and it doesn't work. It doesn't work. They talk about what they're going to do, and then they do it. They don't need to tell us what they're going to do, because they do it immediately afterwards. I mean, this film is shoddy. It's really poorly made. And Shyamalan blah blah should be ashamed, really. This needed a complete re-edit. It needed to have a normal structure. It would have been a really good kids' fantasy film if it had a normal structure, if it wasn't jutting all over the place. And it's a good cast as well. There are good actors in this film, and they are wasted with their talent in this, because they don't develop. They're not well written. They're poorly executed. And I don't know what else I could say. Avoid it, unless you want to see how bad it is. I won't say it's boring. It's not boring, because when I watched it, I was at least entertained by how bad the dialogue was and how bad the editing was. But if you're not interested in the cartoon show, if you're not interested in trailers, if you really don't like a film that has Bender in the title, then stay away. Another thing about Bender's, like, the world in this film is split up into 4 nations. There's fire, air, earth, and water. And the Fire Nations have taken over pretty much all of the kingdoms except the water one. And basically, people that can manipulate like earth or fire or water or whatever, they're called benders. So this Avatar kid, who can control all 4 elements, has to be taught. So in the first film, he's learning how to become a water bender as well as being an air bender. And the title itself, I know they wanted to call this film Avatar: The Last Airbender, but they couldn't because of James Cameron's film. But even so, Bender in the title? Why? Why not call it The Last Air Warrior or something? And there's so much Oriental influence in this film, and I'm not against that. It's good, but the battle scenes are martial arts. They are kung fu moves. So you see these Fire Nations, and they have swords, and the Water Kingdom people have swords, but you don't see them use them. You don't see any hacked off limbs. It's a PG film. You just see them do Tai Chi constantly, and they don't look any good because of the bad special effects. And in terms of effects, the 3D is awful. I haven't seen this film in 2D, but this is a 2D film. The 3D, I won't say it's rushed, but it certainly isn't necessary. They obviously thought they'd make more money if they released it in 3D, which they have, but it's not good, it's pointless, and the last 20 minutes when there's this epic battle for about 30 seconds, it's too dark. It's too dark.